Hi, what's going on YouTube? Today we're going to be talking about Donald Trump's sovereign wealth fund. This news came out a couple of days ago, and initially when it came out, I wasn't too familiar with the sovereign wealth fund, considering that the United States does not have one. Throughout my research, I found this is something that Joe Biden had talked about as well. Nothing came of it. Now Donald Trump's trying to put forth a sovereign wealth fund. Other countries like China, Norway have sovereign wealth funds. We even have some funds here in the United States on a domestic level, but I think this is interesting. I think this is interesting. The idea has been floated that maybe TikTok could possibly be the first investment in this investment account or fund. But we're going to get into it. We're going to listen to the commentary. Then I want to show you guys a couple of things. So hopefully for those of you, if you're like me, if you don't know much about sovereign wealth funds, by the end of this video, you'll kind of have an understanding of it and kind of know what it is. So let's get into this. Get into this video.
Executive order discharges your Secretary of the Treasury, Scott Bessent, and your Secretary of Commerce, Howard Lutnick, to begin a process that will hopefully result in the creation of an American sovereign wealth fund.
It's a very exciting event. We're going to have a sovereign wealth fund, which we've never had. We have a lot of things that create wealth, and you're seeing that over the last 2 weeks. I think we've created more wealth. Other people have created de-wealth. The people, my predecessors, we're creating a lot of wealth. Scott, maybe you'd like to say something about it, and I'd ask also Howard to say something about it.
Yes, sir. This is very exciting. We're going to stand this thing up within the next 12 months. We're going to monetize the asset side of the U.S. balance sheet for the American people. We're going to put the assets to work. And I think it's going to be very exciting. We're going to study best practices as done around the world. It'll be a combination of liquid assets, assets that we have in this country as we work to bring them out for the American people.
Okay, so basically, to simplify what he just said, a sovereign wealth fund is essentially the U.S. government creating its own investment account or investment fund, essentially. And they're proposing that, potentially TikTok could be one of the first investments that we make in this sovereign wealth fund. So we'll continue to listen to a little more.
The extraordinary size and scale of the U.S. government and the business it does with companies should create value for American citizens. If we are going to buy 2 billion COVID vaccines, maybe we should have some warrants and some equity in these companies and have that grow for the help of the American people. So I bring all these things together. I think Scott and I will create an amazing sovereign wealth fund for you, sir.
So other countries have sovereign wealth funds, and they're much smaller countries, and they're not the United States. We have tremendous potential in this country, tremendous. You're seeing that, what's happened just in a short period of time. And as an example, TikTok, we're going to be doing something perhaps with TikTok, and perhaps not. If we make the right deal, we'll do it, otherwise we won't. But I have the right to do that, and we might put that in the sovereign wealth fund, whatever we make, or if we do a partnership with very wealthy people, a lot of options, but we could put that as an example in the fund, and we have a lot of other things that we could put in the fund. And I think in a short period of time, we'd have one of the biggest funds, and some of them are pretty large, I must tell you. Some of the Saudi Arabia fund is on the large side, but eventually we'll catch it. But we're going to create a lot of wealth for the fund, and I think it's about time that this country had a sovereign wealth fund, and these two gentlemen and some others are going to work with them very.
How is a sovereign wealth fund usually established? A sovereign wealth fund is usually established through government funding surplus or trade surplus, which to my knowledge, we don't have either one of those things. We're operating at a $36 trillion deficit. Now, another thing that has been floated is Bitcoin. Now, I've talked about a strategic Bitcoin reserve and Bitcoin that we already have in U.S. custody. Now, that could be something that could be used. It could be used and deployed into jumping off this U.S. sovereign wealth fund, but we'll just have to see. We'll just have to see. It's fairly new. But what I want you guys to understand is that even though Donald Trump is signing this executive order, this does not guarantee that this sovereign wealth fund will be created. It does have to have congressional blessing. You know, he has to have the blessing of Congress. So this is merely something that this executive order will get the ball rolling. Now, why do I say that? Come over here to whitehouse.gov. You look here. The executive order directs the Secretary of the Treasury and the Secretary of Commerce to deliver a plan within 90 days for the creation of a sovereign wealth fund. The Secretary of the Treasury and the Secretary of Commerce will work closely with the Director of the Office of Management and Budget and the Assistant of the President for Economic Policy to develop the plan. The order directs the Secretary to include in the plan recommendations for funding mechanisms, investment strategies, fund structure, and governance models. So this is something that we're going to have to sit back. We're going to have to see. Donald Trump has signed the executive order. He's done his part. He's gotten the ball rolling. Now we'll see if he can get the blessing of Congress to be able to initiate this sovereign wealth fund and officially create it. I mean, I don't really see why it would get blocked, but you know how it goes with Congress. So we'll just have to see. Now, I told you that we do have some sovereign wealth funds over here in the United States at a state level. So if we come here, I don't think this list is up to date, like today up to date, but it does have a few of the states that do have sovereign wealth funds. As you can see, these sovereign wealth funds are usually used for educational purposes or state government operations. Now, as you can see, Texas has one, Alaska, Utah, Oregon, Louisiana, New Mexico, Wyoming. I don't see my state's name on there, so that's a little bit disappointing. But I think these sovereign wealth funds are a good idea, and I don't understand why we haven't had one in the United States, considering the fact that these sovereign wealth funds, some of these states are the reason they don't have income tax. You know, these sovereign wealth funds, the state, is able to make investments. Those investments are able to generate a return, and those returns can be used in the place of taxes to cover different costs. So I think it's an extremely good thing. Now, who has sovereign wealth funds on a country level? Who are the other countries that have sovereign wealth funds? So let's take a look. This is swfinstitute.org. As you can see here, Sovereign Wealth Fund Institute. If you come here, this is a ranking by the top sovereign wealth funds in the world. As you can see, Norway is number one with about 1.7 trillion in total assets. Who do you see right behind them? Our biggest op, China, with about 1.3 trillion in assets. You see Abu Dhabi coming in at 4, Kuwait coming in at 5, with a little over $1 trillion in assets. And we should be on this list. We should be on this list. We should be number one, actually. We should be number one. It's crazy that, we've allowed other countries, much smaller GDPs, to be able to get the upper leg on us, or get the head start, or have these $1 trillion funds, almost $1 trillion funds, and our name not be on the list anywhere. So I do think it's about that time. It's something that we need to get going, and we'll just have to see. We'll just have to see. Once again, Trump has signed the executive order. The ball is rolling. We'll see what happens through Congress. We'll see if we're able to get TikTok in there. We'll see if we're able to get Bitcoin in there. We'll see if we're able to get, some of our greatest AI companies in there, some semiconductor. We'll see. We'll see what plans they have for the United States Sovereign Wealth Fund. And, we'll definitely be tracking it. We'll definitely be tracking it because it's important to know about. It's important to know about. Hopefully, through this sovereign wealth fund, we can generate some return, start chipping away at this $36 trillion debt, start using it to pay for different infrastructure and pay for different initiatives and things that the United States is trying to accomplish without raising taxes. Hopefully something like this could allow the United States to even lower some taxes. So we'll just have to see. We'll just have to see. There's a lot of possibilities, but the sovereign wealth fund is something that I think is going to be good if done the correct way. But that's all I got for y'all today. I'll see you on the next one.